Good morning to everybody. How you doing? Hope all's well. Keep up the beautiful work. Be'ezrat Hashem, Yitbarach v'Yitromam. Today is Thursday. That's it. We had the Siyum Bechorot. Like I told you in one of the previous classes, there was a teenager who was in Neverland. Of course, no teenager over here oversleeps. No way. Jose, Baruch Hashem. Sometimes they have something called a bagel that the guy sleeps for 12 hours straight, but they don't do that around here. They might sleep for 18 hours straight, but 12 hours I've never seen. Yishtabach Shemo. So a few years ago, guy calls me up. He woke up 11:30. Oh, Rabbi, I think I missed all the siyums and I'm a firstborn. I said, hey, how you doing? I said, you got to fast the rest of the day. So he turned over, put the cover over his head, and Baruch Hashem, he went back to sleep till the Seder. But that's in Neverland. But over here, no one would ever do that. Baruch Hashem, everyone wakes up, they put on the talit, tefillin. Thank you, Hashem. We tell the children that are getting bar mitzvah, we tell them when they love to show their koracha, they show the tefillin, they get excited. The rabbis bless them. We hope and pray that you will be this excited in 50, 60 years as well to put on the tefillin, and the whole life to be this excited to put on the tefillin. Be'ezrat Hashem. Of course, during the honeymoons, everyone's excited for everything. But the question is when the honeymoon is over. So thank goodness, everyone we know they'll never miss tefillin. Be'ezrat Hashem minyan, etc. If someone's traveling, they should go safely. Someone already traveled, they should be safe. One guy told me, I said, why are you going to Punta Cana? He says, Rabbi, I want to see the ocean up close. This way I could picture Moshe splitting the ocean. Yishtabach Shemo La'al. I said, how you doing? That's wishful thinking, but how come you can't go right here to Coney Island Beach, Brighton Beach, and watch this the sea split? Anyway, back to our subject. Wherever you are, you should have the greatest seder, the greatest everything. So today is a little different. If there is a teenager from Neverland that wakes up late and he says, "Who's there another siyum?" He does not have to fast the rest of the day because Sephardic tradition tells us that the fast was supposed to be Saturday, but we don't fast on Saturday. So once it's pushed off 100%. There are other rabbis that say that the Ashkenaz to do it today. So a lot of synagogues do it. Listen, the reason why our synagogues do it is number one, because they get each meal sponsored. How you doing? And we got to pay the rabbi's check. That's reason number one. Reason number two is very hard. Some people have certain things that they do and they can't live without doing them. Our fathers brought us when we were little kids, and now the people who became fathers, mashallah, they bring their children to shul. So it's a beautiful thing. So if you are going to a siyum, there's also a milah today, shirbu mahod b'Israel. If someone takes part in a milah, they don't have to go to the siyum bechorot. You could get real sambusak instead of getting the kosher for Passover 100-calorie macaroon Shema Yisrael. That would be even better than going to the Siyum Bechorot, but it's all good. But if someone couldn't make it today, they're a free bird. Also, we don't have to bring back to the girls that are firstborns. We do that on an average year, but this year, since it's pushed off, we don't have to bring it for them. So today is the Tani Bechorot, and tonight is the Bidikat Hametz. Bezrat Hashem Itbarach. If you need to know the time of checking, it's 20 minutes after sunset. You could just ask Siri what time sunset is. If you're in Brooklyn, New York, sunset is 7:30, which means 7:50 is when we could start checking the house for Bidikat Hametz. We have somebody else hide the 10 pieces. They should write it down. As we mentioned, not to talk Lashon Hara, but sometimes, God bless, you have girls in further than Neverland. They might be TIKing, TOKing, etc. And I don't know if it's legal, not legal anymore, but we know spiritually not recommended for the children. So they're making videos, they're doing, and they might forget where they put the pieces because they might forget. So it's good to write it down. If you usually carry a pen behind your ear, Bob the Builder style, you could just pull it out and write down where you hide the 10 pieces. Also, each piece should be made smaller than a kazayit. Also, even if you're away, you should make bedikah hametz where you are. Ask your local rabbi. for specifics. That's why they sell the already made 10 pieces. But wherever you are, I'm sure you could get some hametz, make it smaller, and then tomorrow morning is the burning of the hametz. Now, even though we're having hametz all day tomorrow and tomorrow night dinner if you want, however, you still have to burn the hametz tomorrow by the time, which is approximately 11 something, 11:20, I believe, over here. The reason why you have to burn it by 11 is because we said if someone sees you burning at 3 in the afternoon, then next year he's going to say, what do you mean? I saw the rabbi burning at 3 in the afternoon, so I don't have to rush. However, therefore, we burn it at 11 o'clock, even though you're allowed to have hametz tomorrow as well. And we said many times what's the rundown and the itinerary for this year Shabbat. There is a halacha. I think I mentioned it in one of the classes as well. In on the news in the yeshiva world or one of these places that the rabbis gave a halacha. You're not allowed to throw bread in the seat in the toilet because it might. So people think it's a halacha thing. It's not a halacha thing. It's if the whole Israel throws them in the toilet at the same time, who knows what's going to happen? And the people, the hametz is going to back up uli, even though it's not considered hametz anymore. However, still, because of logistics, they made other ideas. Like we also said, women who are mystical and spiritual do not want to bring bread into the restroom, so you could spray it with a little Windex, and therefore, once you make it unedible for a dog, it's as if you did destroy it, and you already, according to halakha, all you have to do is destroy it. Tashbitu seor mi batechem. However, we burn it because it represents the Yisahara. Since we burn it, right, on Friday, so tomorrow you're good with just Windexing it or destroying it in another manner. Not tomorrow, on Saturday morning, Be'ezrat Hashem. So keep that in mind as well. There's a lot of questions going on. Every rabbi gets 1,000 questions a day. Baruch Hashem. That's a beautiful thing. You see how our community is growing. Baruch Hashem. There's a dime a dozen rabbis, and they're each getting 1,000 Yishtabach Shemo texts for what to do. So look how many people are learning and they want to do the right thing. Hashem should look down, watches people, and just bring the Mashiach. We could really use it. Rav Levi from Rav Levi Yitzchak from Berdichev. Yesterday, I was saying over at Divrei Torah, and I said maybe he got his name from this. We mentioned yesterday. We finished off with Yahatz. Yahatz is splitting the middle matzah in half. The middle matzah is Levi, Kohen Levi Israel, but it's also Yitzhak, as we mentioned. So it's Levi Yitzchak from Berdichev. May his zechut be a blessing for all of us. Be'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach. But he one time asked his shamash, do me a favor, go get me from the black market some Turkish wool. That would be compared today to, how you doing, to Cuban cigars before Obama needed a few for himself and allowed just a couple boxes. Imagine, just let me take a little. Now that's allowed. But in the old days, pre-Obama, you can't bring Cuban cigars. A rabbi asked his shamash, do me a favor, go get me Cuban cigars. God bless. In Wisconsin, when I worked in a certain school there was a father who maybe gave the rabbi a couple of Cuban cigars. So the little girl, his daughter, was in school. He tells her to write in her homework pad, ask daddy for Cuban yebrat from Cuba for the rabbi. How you doing? But that's only in Wisconsin. We don't know from these kind of things. But anyway, the rabbi tells the shamash, go please get me some Turkish wool. And in Europe, where they were, in Poland or wherever it might have been, it was off limits. It was contraband. And still, the shamash comes back a few minutes later. Rabbi Hicka, I went to the black market and I got some. It's all Jewish people that sell in the black market, and I got Turkish wool. And it was Erev Pesach. And then he says, "Do me a favor, go get me some bread. Go get me hametz." And the shamash looks at him, Rabbi, it's Erev Pesach. He says, "Do I ask you questions? Baba, go get me bread." And he goes and he goes and he goes and he goes and he's searching and searching and he looks every single where and he cannot find any bread. He comes back empty handed and he says, I thank you so much. He says, Hashem, he was known, Rav Levi Yitzchak, as the defender of Am Yisrael, the Senegor of Am Yisrael. And he used to make the benefit of the doubt for the people on such a major scale that in heaven they gave the benefit of the doubt for the whole Am Yisrael, all because of him. Look at the power of what one person could do. They could tip the scale for the entire nation, Yishtabach Shemo. And he starts to talk to Hashem. He says, Hashem, right now there's a law you're not allowed to have Turkish wool. And there are police enforcing. And if someone, God forbid, gets caught, they could even be hanged, Shema Israel. Imagine. And still, I was able to get some heke from this guy who knows a guy who knows a guy. However, you said thousands of years ago to not have hametz, and there's no police enforcing, and there's no being hanged on the gallows if someone has hametz, and still we cannot find a piece of bread over here. Look how good your people are, and look how good our people are. Like we said, they're asking questions, the men, the women. God bless, Baruch Hashem. Even the children are asking questions. Yishtabach Shemo La'ad. In Never Never Land, the children's questions are, what's for lunch? What's for snack? What could I do? I'm too bored. Could I have the Amex? But over here, Baruch Hashem, the children are all practicing for the Haggadah. So yesterday we finished Yahatz. What's after Yahatz? Magid. Magid is a commandment from the Torah. The night of Passover, there's a lot of things that we do, but not all of them are a commandment from the Torah. Kiddush is a commandment from the Torah, without the grape juice part, we'll say. But Kiddush is eating the matzah is a commandment from the Torah. Today, nowadays, without Korban Pesach, Maror isn't even from the Torah. It's rabbinic. And one of the things are from the Torah, V'higadata lebencha bayom ahu, you shall teach your child, V'higadata magid, to say over the Haggadah is also a mitzvah from the Torah to say it over. Not everyone could say the whole thing. Some people just listen. Just like the Megillah, when someone has you in mind and reads the Megillah out loud, and you have a mind to fulfill your obligation, it's as if you fulfilled your obligation. So if someone cannot read, not the guy who's from Johannesville who might be a little lazy, and he says, "You guys read, I'll listen." How you doing? That's not a good thing. It's a beautiful thing to be able to read it. Baruch Hashem, Yishtabach Shemo La'ad. And as mentioned, the way the children read, the way the children partake, it's the most magnificent thing. Ken Yirbu. Tonight, Saturday night, by the Seder, the children are the star of the show. Yishtabach Shemo La'ad. So it's a commandment from the Torah. And if someone isn't as learned as they would like to be. Some people come from places where they didn't know how to read Hebrew or something like that. Even the women have to read the Haggadah and listen to the men if they don't know how to read the Haggadah. That's how important it is. But we know the main part is the three things: the Pesach, Matzah, Umaror. Now we know when we say matzah, we point to the matzah. When we say maror, we point to the maror. Uli, I spilled the coffee. We're in trouble. When we say Pesach, we do not point to the shank bone. There is a halacha. You're not allowed, Hamavad brings down, excuse me, when a woman or a man is buying meat for the holiday, he says, Hamavadia, do not say this meat is for the Pesach. I need meat for Pesach. It's for Pesach. Don't touch it. Believe it or not, we know there's something called a Korban Pesach. And we know today you're not allowed to have a Korban outside of the Beit HaMikdash. What if someone does consecrate something to the Beit HaMikdash? They're not allowed to derive benefit from it, believe it or not. Now, we don't hold like this, but if you're in Eretz Yisrael for the holiday, inshallah, we'll all be there. The rule is Of course, you could go to the courtail, no problem. Hamavadia holds Harabayit. We're not allowed to go until Mashiach comes. Bezrat Hashem, the soldiers go because obviously they have to protect us, but it's pikuach nefesh. But regular people are not allowed to go to the Har Habayit. Some people, believe it or not, do not go to the old city and especially the Kotel on Pesach because some say you're still commanded to bring the Korban Pesach, but we don't have Korban Pesach today, and they used to have it and slaughter it over there. And since over there is where it happens, some people won't go there because you put yourself in between a rock and a hard place. But we hold you can go, no problem, Bezrat Hashem, and we hope that we will bring the Korban Pesach. So there's a halacha. Don't say this meat is for Pesach. You could say the cheese. You could say the bisli. Boy, do I miss those bazooka days. Those were the good old days with those bazooka gums with the joke. Hella, the gum today is just like Yiridat Hadorot, Shema. But anyway, you could say everything is for Pesach. However, you cannot say the meat is for Pesach, and because it's a problem. It looks like you're eating korbanot outside of the Beit HaMikdash, which you're not allowed to do. So when we point to the shank bone, when we say Pesach, you're making it look like that is Korban Pesach, which brings us into this predicament. Therefore, when we say Masa, we point. When we say Maror, we point. As kids, it could be people in on planet Mars, even further than Never Neverland. They may have pointed to their sister when they said Maror, but we don't do those things. We all get along and love each other, Baruch Hashem. But when it comes to the word Pesach, we look at the shank bone, but we do not point to it because of this reason. Now, Hamavadia also holds if somebody roasts the shank bone, they're not allowed to eat it the night of Pesach because that's too similar to the Korban Pesach. The Korban Pesach was roasted, not boiled, but roasted. It's a whole halacha. It's a whole subject. Even if someone had did the Korban Pesach in the old days and it was touching something else, so the juices come out and then go back in, and that's like you're cooking and boiling it. Now, a person has to be very careful. We said this is what Hamavadia holds. If someone has a custom that they're 1,000,000% sure that it's an ancient custom and it goes all the way back, then they should follow their custom. Some people have a custom to lift it. Some people have a custom to roast it as well. Some people even eat it and they say zecher l'kor. Now, like I said, if a person's a gazillion% sure, then they should continue doing it. But a lot of people don't know what their custom is. Do we say ishvi zewatak? Do we not say it? Do we do this? Do we do that? So the rule is whenever you're not sure, you jump on the bandwagon of Rabino Grande, Hamavadia, because you know you're doing 100% correct, not 100%. When you follow Hamavadia, you're doing a gazillion%, 1 gazillion% of what the Torah wants us. Hamavadia, Baruch Hashem. Every single halacha is not just a halacha, it's 1,000,000 pages of halachot all behind that halacha. So, like I said, if that's your custom, but on the surf, if you're not sure, then if it's roasted, we don't need it. Sometimes the women boil it and then they roast it. So, since it was majority cooked, boiled, then it has a halacha of being boiled. But if it's just roasted, then you're not supposed to eat it that night, and especially don't say korban zecher korban pesach unless you're a gazillion% sure that that's your custom. Regarding other foods, you're allowed to roast your rubba or whatever it is, but the shank bone is an extra problem, and some people won't even eat roasted meat that night, but that's not what the rabbi tells us to do. So keep that in mind as well. We like to keep the children intrigued the entire night because if they're the star of the show, we can't have them going up to sleep or we can't have them, we have to engage them. And in the old days, they recommended in the halacha to give them this, to give them not that. It says to give them nuts. Today, the kids are allergic to nuts. God should protect everyone. And every seder has a guy that they might call that he's a little nuts. Not that we know from these things, of course, as well. However, today, of course, the kids that have candy and all kinds of things. There were times that they brought Sephardic candy from Israel, because when there's no corn syrup, it doesn't taste so good. The lollipops of Pesach aren't the same. A lot of the candy is not the same. The jelly rings have politics. Uli, what happened to our youth? I didn't see any Bartons. I didn't see the Hamovadya cookies this year. We got to go find them. We're going on a class trip, even though they might not be as yummy as the Swiss fudge cookies that we like to eat, or maybe even an Oreo, but we like to eat it because it's the halacha of Rabino Grande Grande, because that takes us to the halacha of egg matzah. Saturday, you can't eat matzah, as mentioned. Egg matzah you can have, even if you wake up early in the morning to pray early, like many people are, to have the bread. So some people think you could have matzah then. You can't have matzah from dawn that morning, from 5 a.m. that morning. So it has nothing to do with when Hamas is off limits. You can't have matzah the entire day from the morning, but you can have egg matzah. They sell these little tea matzahs that are really hamotzi. People think since they're in a box like crackers, so people think that they're regular crackers. However, it's not. If the ones that are little tea matzot, those are hamotzi, believe it or not. Also, we mentioned the halacha regarding making Netilat Yadayim all year long. When you wash Netilat Yadayim for bread, you only make a beracha if you're going to have 2 ounces or more of the bread. If you're only going to have 1 ounce, so you make Birkat Hamazon, but you do not make the beracha al Netilat Yadayim. And during the year, it's so easy to eat 2 ounces of bread unless your nutritionist is watching you on Google Earth. Or now today we have a couple of items. Oziv is imratya, vayhili lishua. They call it the big Oz. How you doing? Oziv is imratya. But anyway, short story long, it's easy because it's bread. But matzah, it's not always easy to eat 2 ounces. The night of Pesach, we might eat it, but on a regular Sunday's morning lunch, Monday morning lunch, or when we have matzah, to have 2 ounces isn't so simple. So you would have to make al netilat yadayim if you're not planning to eat without the beracha. You do netilat yadayim without the beracha of al netilat yadayim. So the good part is a lot of women, God bless them, they make the lahamajin on the tea matzot, and those tea matzot are hamotzi. So it's like you ate matzah when you wash. So you have the square matzot in the box. Each slice is 1 ounce, and therefore it's one kizayit. A kizayit is an ounce. So if a person wants to have the box matzah, to have 2 slices is a lot. But if you have, some women also make the lahamajin, they break them into four. You have the squares, and then they throw the meat on it, etc. That is still hamotzi. So for the 2 ounces, you're good. And then even though there's only haroset officially the night of the seder, but since we're eating a lot of matzah on Sunday morning, and Monday morning for lunch as well, therefore, you maybe bring haroset. It makes it easier to eat the matzah, or people put guacamole. So the people who eat hummus could have the hummus. Some people don't eat hummus, as we know. And it's not only because of this concept that we heard that hummus sounds like hames. That's one reason. But there are some people, Sephardic even, that they'll only eat rice. But when it comes to the corn and the peas and the chickpeas, they don't eat that. Some do, some don't. Each to their own. Havadiyah tells us that if a person grew up in a home where they have certain stringencies, For example, only eating shmura, only eating rice without the corn and the hummus and all of that. When they get married and start their own lives, they're allowed to start their own minhagim. And if they want to be lenient with these items, you are allowed to, regarding, like we said, shmura and all of those things. So back to the egg matzah item. Egg matzah's mizonot. It doesn't help you to finish the 2 ounces of hamotzi that you need. And Howard Yah was discussing in one of his classes, maybe 50 years ago, maybe even more. Let's say more. But anyway, he said, what is egg matzah? You have something called lechem oni, which is the regular matzah we have, and then you have matzah ashira, the rich man's bread. Not because it's made by chock full of nuts. Heck, the millionaire's money could buy. The reason why they call it the rich man's bread is because instead of making it with water, they made it with fruit juice. How lucky are we today that there's so much plenty around? Yishtabach shemo la'ad. We see in school in the dining room, there's apples rolling on the floor. God bless. There's a million apples just in one cafeteria in a school. Imagine how many apples are just in the state of New York. Yishtabach shemo, oranges and all of the above. God bless. In the old days, not everyone could have a fruit. They had to be wealthy to get themselves an orange. We thank Hashem for all the plenty that He gives us, and He should always give us plenty with beracha. So if somebody takes Passover flour, 100% flour, not regular flour, of course, Passover flour that wasn't baked yet or needed, and they put 100% juice in, not Tropicana from the fridge. You have to squeeze the actual orange or the fruit, and it's only those two. And even if it rises, you're allowed to have that on Pesach according to Sephardic tradition. If you add a hair of water to that juice, guess what happens? It's more hametz than regular bread. Usually it takes 18 minutes for matzah to turn into hametz. That's why they make the matzah bakeries do it before 18 minutes, because then it doesn't rise. However, if the acids that are in the fruit juice together with the water speed up expedite the rising, and it's way faster than 18 minutes. That's why some people don't like to have the egg matzah and these kind of items. However, like we said, Havadia is giving the class, we call this matzah ashira, and if you could even make chali out of a gazillion percent. We don't do this. And I heard a few years ago in Neverland, some people, for some reason, thought it was allowed. They took Passover flour from the matzah bakery and they used it on Passover itself. They heard the word Passover, so they thought they could add water to it. Passover flour just means it's wheat that was ground with no bleaching, without any batich, etc. But if water touches that, it's a gazillion percent hametz, obviously. But if you put fruit juice, today we're not experts in doing this, but mashkichim are, and if they do them in factories, and if you put 100% fruit juice with the Passover flour, you're allowed to have cookies, cakes, the whole dinya. So Havadia is giving the class. There was a man who had a cookie factory in the rabbi's class, and he says, Rabbi, am I allowed to kosher my factory, use Passover flours, and use 100% wine or grape juice to make the cookies? And Havadia said, 1 gazillion% you're allowed to. He said, could I put your name on the bag? And he said, 100%. And they have these cookies that come out, and every year there's politics with these things. It's like Shema Israel. If Hamadia tells us it's good, Hamadia says jump. We don't even ask questions. We don't even jump. We do more than jumping. And he said that these are good. So every year they come out with a new thing, that there's a chemical in there, and the chemical, now when they chemicals are not hametz. We don't eat certain things on our own thinking they're chemicals, like Splenda and stevia. Ask your local rabbi, etc. There are certain lists Now, the funny thing is with certain lists, you have people who get a list from Johannesville.com and they're following that list. And the rabbi who writes that list, he forbids you to carry in the Eruv, but they'll carry in the Eruv. So they go shopping. They take a little from this guy, a little from that guy, a little from this, and they're allowed to do what they want. That's why it says, Aseh lecha rav, make for yourself a rabbi. Why doesn't it say Rabbanim? Because we follow our rabbis. You have people that might find who knows what kind of reform rabbi. You could use the smartphone on this. You could do this. You Shema Yisrael. You follow your rabbi and done. A long story short, Hamavadya allowed it. Chemicals are allowed, but like we said, don't make our own halachot. There's a reason why on certain lists you don't see the stevia and the Splenda kosher for Passover because there must be something in there that's hametz. But a regular chemical, if you go to Home Depot and you get yourself a chemical or something from chemistry in school and you throw it into something, since it's not fit for a dog, you're allowed to have it. So Hamavadya allowed him to put a chemical for preservatives in this cookie. But then people were saying that chemical is like a centrifuge, and the centrifuge separates the wine that they put in is 100% wine, but it separates the wine from the water that's in the wine naturally, not added or from concentrate. It separates it, and then it touches the flour, it becomes hametz. Anyway, there's a lot of controversy, but Muhammad Yah tells us something. We don't even ask questions. It's like the Urim V'Tumim talking to us. And God bless his son Avraham, Rabbi Avraham. He should live and be well. He took over the cookie item. So if you're in a place where they don't have it, you don't have to have it. But we don't get confrontational. That's for sure. Because Am Yisrael, we came out as one nation. We didn't come out as 75 different nations. But unfortunately, like we said, sometimes in Never Never Land, there might be politics. And that's what we need at a time by now, like now, when the hostages are still in captivity, when the soldiers are making seder in the middle of Gaza, Hazaton. One of my students, he joined the IDF, and he sent me pictures this morning. He's going to be there for the holiday. Hashem should protect everyone. Be'ezrat Hashem. All we need is unity. You know, there was a great rabbi who used to make matzah with every stringency possible. And when he was sick one year, he couldn't go to the matzah bakery. He was getting old. And his students came and said, Rebbe, what should we focus on making the matzah when we make it? And he said, you know what you should focus on? There's a widow who comes to the matzah bakery. Make sure you make her feel good. He didn't say this and then make sure it rises. And that's the most important thing when it comes to Pesach, when it comes to all the holidays. Everyone has to try to make shalom and get along, which brings us to the Omer, which we'll talk about as well, because the Omer times when people rush home, some people want to, so sometimes in planet Mars, we'll call Pluto today, Hajj Mars. You have, let's say, the mother in law having dinner, and one son in law prayed in the earlier minyan, one in the later minyan, and now we have to wait, and now we have to think. This whole Omer thing was taken way out of context, which we'll talk about as well. If a person makes a reminder, you're good with it, we'll hear about it again. But for now, make sure, like we said, we're up to Magid. The women have to hear the Haggadah, at least those three parts, and we keep that in mind. And then tomorrow we'll continue Bezrat Hashem, the order of the Seder. For now, we'll stop. I hope everyone has the greatest day. Keep up the beautiful work. Hashem should be with all of you. Be safe. Don't forget tonight's B'dika Hametz. Don't forget Birkat Lanot. If you traveled and you didn't say it, try to say it where you are if they have it. And if not, we hope it's so cold over here, it'll probably still be good, Bezrat Hashem, to make it here. Allah Mac and good things. Have the greatest day. School Shanim Rabot, Nimov Tovot. All the best. Bye.